We're joined now by Ray Eglington from 4Communications to National. Ray Eglington to talk about the recent award-winning employee engagement campaign for Orpic. Ray, tell us about your clients and the challenge they faced.
Well, Orpic was a business that had come together from 3 existing companies in Oman, 3 refining and petrochemicals business, subsidiaries of Oman Oil. And the history of these 3 companies had been organisations that had worked very separately, had had challenges in working together. The management team of the new business realised that by bringing together there could be significant business and commercial benefits, but that was only ever going to work if they could bring the businesses together. A great example of how these businesses are separate is that although they were all on the same location, had big wire fences with barbed wire along the top between them. People couldn't even get between the businesses. So our job was to help create a brand that the employees could get behind, and that was what building pride was all about.
So it wasn't just the metaphorical silos we face all the time, it was actual physical divisions between
There were
these
very
businesses.
real silos with turnstiles that you had to use to get through from one business to another. Perhaps a good example of how people just weren't working closely together.
So what was your strategy to get those physical and metaphorical silos broken down?
Very simple. This had to be a brand that was of the people for the people. So it had to come from the employees, it had to come from the people from within each business. There was a communications task force we worked with representatives from each of the 3 businesses. And we then used them to help create a very wide-ranging consultation program with employees throughout the businesses, involving altogether more than 600 employees took part in meetings, surveys, and different forms of input.
Getting these kinds of grassroots, ground-up engagement campaigns to actually work is often easier said than done, isn't it? What were some of the challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
The challenges were, you're absolutely right, there were a number of challenges. The location, the different silos that people were in, the fact that this had never been done. People were a bit nervous about how to give input and what kind of input they could give. We had to really encourage them to give us all their feelings. Language was an issue with the different nationalities that we had working there. And I think coming up with something at the end that recognised all the inputs and the 3 different company cultures was very important.
So tell me how you did that. How did you take all of that raw information from your research phase and synthesize it into something actually practical in terms of a brand communication strategy?
I think the key issue for us was recognising that actually even processes that were already underway, the new company had been named, for example, and what came back clearly and strongly was that nobody liked that name. So we took all this different input. We involved the communications task force in helping analyse and develop the brand, because a big part of our role was about skills transfer over time. And we then came up with something, a whole brand positioning that was completely new, that took all the strengths that people had identified, that focused on the values of the company that we had worked with the employees to develop, and came up with something new. And that something new was Orpic. It was a new name, a new brand, a new approach that was very much based on the employees' values.
So tell me about the launch of the new brand internally. How did that go down? How did the employees feel consulted? Were they was that a successful moment?
It was fantastic, and I say that just because this was a culture in which over the previous 6 months the senior management team had started visiting the different parts of the business and getting in front of the staff in a way that hadn't happened before. I think historically we'd been talking about quite hierarchical businesses. There weren't really big company meetings. So we brought everyone together on launch day into one event, and gave an explanation of the values, the process we'd followed, and then the big unveil. And it was literally standing ovation. It was fantastic to see that people were so pleased with what they'd got. And we had, I remember one of the technicians stood up and and said it was one of the proudest moments of his life working for a company that now had a proper brand, as he put it. So it was really fantastic.
Well, that's a wonderful example of a measurable, a visible outcome. But what other kinds of measurable successes did you have for this campaign?
Well, some of the measurements came through that research process, and there was a series of benchmarks in there about the communications and the strategy that the company was following. We then did some follow-up work afterwards to get views from people, and we then solicited responses from out the company. Got a very positive set of responses, all within the business. And actually, the next phase, which we're now into since, is about taking that brand into the communities and developing the relationships with some of the external stakeholders there.
Excellent. Well, congratulations again on your MEPRA award, and thanks very much for speaking to us today.
Thank you very much.